So welcome to today's webinar. So I will just jump in and start right away. So in this webinar, I will be talking about how to generate effective feedback from online assessments. So using ExamViz, which is an application available to all instructors at the University of Alberta. So it's an eClass plugin basically at this point. So let me just start right away. So I have some speaking points. So first of all, I'll just emphasize that online assessments are efficient and effective. Indeed, they are. And reporting the exam scores, just telling your students that, hey, you got 50%, 80%, 90% is not necessarily a feedback. And finally, we will just see how ExamViz, this eClass tool, can help us generate personalized feedback from online assessments really quickly. So online assessments on eClass, basically, they are good because they have a lot of options in terms of questions. We can have multiple choice, short answer questions, and a bunch of other things. So in the same exam, it is so easy to add them. So that's one advantage, especially for those selected response question formats, such as multiple choice, true, false, and things like that. Like as soon as you enter the answer key, it's going to be fast and objective marking. Basically, as soon as the students just finish the exam, they will have their marks. And for other types of questions like calculation questions, essay, short answer questions, you can go through the questions really quickly and again, mark them really fast. So it is really good. Online assessments also provide additional test security features such as randomizing the questions or positions of the questions on the exam, or randomizing the positions of the response options. So students, when they answer the questions, they see A, B, C, D's, especially if they are taking multiple choice exam in different orders. So they are not necessarily the same. So that increases test security a little bit. So we also have additional data on test taking behavior. So whenever my students are just finishing their exams, I always take a look at, I always just go ahead, take a look at their response times, how many of those responses have been just changed from, let's say, correct to incorrect, correct to correct, and things like that. All those additional log data is available on eClass, which helps us understand how the exam was working, how the questions were functioning, how much time they spent on the questions and on the overall exam. So when it comes to just just giving a feedback from an online assessment, you may think that there are not many options. Basically, you'll just go ahead, calculate the total scores, and then you'll just report it. And you may just say that, hey, your exam score is blah, blah %, but it is not necessarily feedback. So in this case, knowing about their overall score is a type of feedback, maybe, but it doesn't necessarily tell them about how they performed on the exam, in which areas they did better, in which areas they did not do well. So in which type of topics or content areas they need to study further to improve their understanding and score better in the upcoming exams. So that's why it is like a tricky situation, but fortunately we have a good solution to this problem. So we have ExamViz, which is a plugin available on eClass. So I just put the link over here. So this is the folder where you can find all the user guide, instructional videos, and other things about ExamViz if you are interested in learning more about it after today's presentation. But what I'm going to do is that I will just highlight 5 steps in setting up ExamViz in your course. And I will have a quick live demo using a kind of like a fake course that I just created right away, right before the presentation. So you'll just see how that really works. Then maybe I can just answer some questions about the other details after the presentation is over. So there are certain steps. First, we will add the ExamViz plugin to our eClass page. We will create an online quiz on eClass. So because that's how it works. And we will group the questions based on their content area. So these content areas could be your lectures or the units that you are covering, some kind of categorization that allows you to just create a better understanding of what type of content they've been learning. So just you are grouping the questions based on their common content specifications, basically. And you are just defining at least one key concept or more for each question. I will just show you what that is. And finally, you insert some feedback statements for each content category that you define in number 3, step 3, then it's all good to go. So basically, you can just start using ExamViz right after that. Of course, after students just finish the exam, you will be able to generate the report. So this is a sandbox that I just created just for this demonstration. Basically, I created a fake quiz. I called it Canadian Knowledge, a general knowledge quiz. So there are 16 questions, short answer, multiple choice, anything. At the end, so I just grouped the questions in a way that there are 4 questions about geography in Canada. So another 4 questions about history of Canada, another 4 questions about Canadian sports. And finally, there are additional 4 questions around Canadian symbols or emblems and things like that. So what I will do is that I will first just click on add an activity or resource, and I will activate ExamViz or add it to my course first. It is an external tool. We click on external tool and select ExamViz from this list. It is already on the list, so that's good. For students to understand what ExamViz is, either you can enter the name, or sometimes I just say ExamViz score reporting or feedback system or something like that. Now we have the ExamViz plugin over here, but we will go ahead and modify our exam to prepare it. So I have this quiz. I'll just click on edit. I'll just open the exam first. I will go ahead and click on categories. So what we need to do is to create some categories under our main parent category for this exam. So I find my exam, it says Canadian Knowledge Quiz with 16 questions. Now I will just create some parent categories based on the categories that I just mentioned earlier. First, I will just say geography, and then I will just select Canadian Knowledge Quiz again. I will just say history, and I will select my Canadian Knowledge Quiz again. This time I'll just say sports. So these are the categories where students will see their score. So they will be split up based on these content categories. So they are supposed to be kind of meaningful categories for students to understand, so they can improve their scores in those content areas after they see their reports. And maybe the last one is the symbols. That's how I will group my questions. Actually, I just put the symbols here, so I'll just put it under here. Basically, symbols. Yeah, there you go. And for any category that you enter, you change your mind, you can go ahead, click on delete, and it's gone basically. So right now I have 4 categories. As you can see, there are 0 questions associated with each one. So what I will do is that I will switch to the questions tab. And this time I will go back to my main category. There are 16 questions, as you can see. So one thing that I will do before I highlight how to group your questions is that for each question, if you click on edit, and manage tags, you can enter some or insert some kind of key concept about this individual item. So for example, it says, what is the name of the deepest lake in Canada? So I will click edit. I'll just say manage tags, and I'll just say this key concept underlying this particular question is lakes in Canada. So that's what I will just say. So as you can see, I did it for the other items. So based on this key concept, students will be seeing a list of concepts based on the questions that they answer incorrectly at the end. So basically, instead of showing the questions to them individually, like what questions they got right or wrong, so they will see this individual tags and they will just know, hey, there was a question about lakes in Canada, but it seems that I did not answer it correctly. So maybe I need to study it further. All right, this is it. So after entering the tags for each question, which is not a must, but it improves the value and utility of your score report coming out of ExamViz. So I definitely recommend adding those tags. You can add multiple tags to each question as well. It doesn't have to be one key concept. So I will just go ahead. I'll just select question 1, question 3, 4, and question 2. They belong to the category or move to the category of geography. I'll just click on move. So now I have a geography category with 4 questions. Going back to the remaining 12 questions, and I'll just select 5, maybe 6, 7, and 8. So those are the questions about Canadian history. So I'll just move them to the history section, move. Then I just go back to the main category again. As you can see, there are 8 questions left. So this time I will select 9, 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I will move them to the sports category. And I have, going back to the remaining questions on my quiz. So the remaining questions like question 13, 14, it doesn't matter which order you select, basically 15 and 16. And I will move them to the symbols category. So because that's how I designed my exam, it covers 4 content areas and that's it. basically this is it. So this is the basic setup that you need for your exam. So, and after that one, you are going back to your main page and opening the exam with score reporting application you just included. The first time you open it, it may ask you to just give your consent or approve it to be able to open that. So now it shows that maximum marks, there are 16 questions, 4 categories, there are 16 questions in total. So what I can do is that I can click on the edit feedback category, and for each category, I can enter some feedback comments. So basically I can say that if students score in this particular area more than 80%, I will give them a kind of a positive feedback. Good job. So you have done an excellent work in this area, or other things. So it's not like only one sentence. If their score is less than 80%, then we can just possibly just say, it seems that that your performance in this area was not sufficient. Please review the materials, something, and basically just save. So what happens is that this creates these feedback statements for based on the threshold that you just created. If the students perform better than 80%, at least 80% or more on this area, they will receive this kind of praising message or positive feedback. And the other one is more like for students below the threshold, for students who did not necessarily do well. And in that case, you can just encourage them to study certain things and just come back to you with certain questions and whatever you can just add to encourage students, not necessarily to criticize them or anything like that. When you just add this, so if you just forget about what your content category was all about, even though it says geography, you can also click on questions. Your questions can just remind you what questions are associated with this particular category, which is a nice touch because it reminds you what that really is. So basically, after the exam is over, assume that I just entered for each of those categories, geography, history, and things like that. So right now it says feedback settings missing for some categories because I only entered the feedback only for one of the content categories. But if I do it for all 4 of them, this will be gone. So as soon as your students just finish the exam, their data is in eClass already. You can go ahead, click on the generate reports button, basically. So the reports will be generated. And after that, once they become available, you will be able to see the reports here. So I will just show you an example from last year. So basically last fall, I was teaching a large size course with 123 students. So this is one of the reports for one of those students. Since it doesn't just show their name, anything, I can just show you this. So this is one of those reports that are available to you. So basically, as an instructor, you see the report for every single student in your classroom, but each student only sees their own report. So they don't have access to anything else beyond that. So there are a couple of visualizations explaining how they performed on the exam and relative to others. So for example, in this case, we have some like blue areas, like this shaded area showing students' performance, and the purple area underneath, they are overlapping a little bit. But the purple one shows the classroom average. For this particular student, we can see that he or just she did way better in lecture 4 compared to the rest of the class, whereas she wasn't necessarily, or he wasn't necessarily doing well compared to other students in the other content areas. So we have additional figures like this, and each figure has some explanation right next to them explaining what they are. And we have some additional visualizations, pretty much like giving the same information with multiple charts, whatever they are used to, whatever they prefer, they can use it. So they can see the classroom distribution here. So this is kind of like a bubble chart. So the size of each bubble indicates the number of students falling into each category. So basically, if I move my cursor or mouse over this category, I see that in this particular class, basically, there are 31 students who got between 80 and 85. We have some students who got really 85, 90, some students who are really high, and there are fewer students in these smaller categories. So the bubble size is smaller, meaning that there are only like 1 or 2 students, maybe not many. So that's why the size of those bubbles are proportionally like related to the number of students falling into that category. Finally, the last thing that I will highlight is they got all the feedback statements that I entered for them, depending on the thresholds that I identified. So lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3, lecture 4, that's how I split my content categories. And as you can see at the bottom of my report, I also see that for each lecture, there's a list of key concepts associated with each lecture. So these are the questions, basically individual questions that students answered incorrectly. In that case, this particular student, for example, answered at least one question incorrectly about learner outcomes. So I'm telling the student to go back to lecture 2 and review learner outcomes again, because she or he just missed one question about this particular key concept. So you can make your key concepts even more detailed or less detailed. It's totally up to you. But after that one, basically, so the report is available to them. They can print it out if they want. But this ExamViz application is open to them as long as you keep the application visible to students. So they can come back anytime in the semester and view their reports again and again, just to review, just to remind themselves like how they did in the exam, what they need to study before the final exam, especially if you're running a cumulative exam. So I think that's pretty much it. So that's what I wanted to highlight today. If you have any further questions about ExamViz or how it can be really utilized in a certain setting, feel free to just send me an email. I'll be happy to just answer your questions as much as I can. I hope that it is you find it helpful and you use it in your own classrooms, basically. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today, joining us.